Okay, I think we're live. So, so how's my sound? If you could let me know, team. Okay. Okay, great. So I'm going to, can I ask you to turn down your sound? Okay, great. I'm going to get an echo. So welcome everybody. I wanted to just thank you for showing up today, and this is a little bit of an experiment. I found that I haven't been teaching very much in the last little bit, and I wanted to start connecting with people more and being able to share things with people that I've been learning over the last little while. It's been a really powerful experience for me. So I'm going to introduce myself if you don't know me. So my name is Olivia Jade, and I've been doing this work for 10 years. And it's been a journey and a progress. Most of the work that I've done in the past was design and marketing, but I always wanted to embrace my path of healing and light. So this is kind of what took me onto this journey. So we're going to be covering in these next 3 days. I've got 3 days planned out, and I named this topic as embodied pleasure. And some people go, okay, well, yeah, pleasure. That sounds interesting. Yeah, everybody wants pleasure, right? And I think often we have a really limited idea of what pleasure can be, or how to get it, or how to cultivate it in a relationship if you've been in a relationship for a long time. And I think mostly the idea of pleasure seems like this thing that's way up there on the hill. Yeah. In reality, it's just a step and a step and a step to creating a bigger capacity for pleasure. So, what we'll discover, okay, and why do I talk about embodiment and what embodiment is? And it seems like a little bit of a lofty word, but you know, in reality, it's about being in our bodies, learning how to feel what's going on in the moment. So that moment is a really important part. Learning how to slow down enough to breathe and feel, just like a yoga practice. That's why we do yoga. We do yoga so that we can live in this physical form and be there. But often we live most of our lives in our heads. And that's only a part of who we are. So I'm just going to shut a door just a moment. There we go. So I'm just going to read something to you. So the reason I chose the word sensual intelligence is because it's not something that we spend a lot of time developing. And the concept is we spend so much time learning how to do things like mastering music, or being good at math or spelling when we're younger, or getting good grades. And then as we get older, we look at accomplishing things, and the things that we talk about accomplishing they're really about things like what we do for work, or how we can have the things that we want. But what starts happening after a while, if you kind of start following a path of a more spiritual path, you start going, oh, but why am I here? What do I want to do? You start questioning things about who you are, but then you have no idea how to get there. And it's usually we read books, we try to do things like workshops, or we go away for retreats. But the thing is that it's a really short period of time that we're doing this. We might go for a weekend or a week, or if you're lucky and you go to a yoga teacher training and you go away for a month. That really changes you, and it's the practice of constantly doing that changes you, not just the weekend or the week or the month, because we lose the practice after a while. So I'll tell you a story. So when I was a young girl, I was in ballet class, like a lot of little girls. I didn't really want to go until I got a little older, because I didn't understand what I was doing. And a thing that my teacher told me is that one day of practice, of not practicing, was like losing a whole week. That everything that's going on really in our bodies is as a form of practice. So if you just actually spend a moment right now feeling into your body, like, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and see, when you take your deep breath, does your breath fill up your body at all? So if I take a deep breath, I can feel that I'm going a little fast, feeling like I can't really catch my breath yet. So I'm going to take another one. And then I'm just going to imagine that I'm rooting down into the earth, so I'm feeling a little bit more grounded and a little more solid. And nice, I just feel so much different. So that alone is the intelligence of our body. But if we don't listen to it, and if we don't tune into it, it's pretty hard. It talks to us a lot. And so when it talks to us, we do need to listen. And I think at the beginning, when our body starts talking to us, it's just like little talk. It's small things, And if it's a big lesson that we need to learn, the lessons get a little bigger, until it kind of like it's sitting at us right in the face, And I think it's important to start listening to our bodies. We all have this longing of what we want, and I think if we start with the way we want to feel, then that makes a big difference. Making decisions on how it feels. And when I'm talking about embodiment, I'm not just talking about embodiment of, there's 3 places that need to be embodied. We need to be connected to this part, but we need to be embodied to our heart, needs to be connected to our mind, and we need to connect our source energy, our sexual energy. That energy needs to be connected as well, that animal in us. And if we have all 3 of these connected, then we have the ability to create a really connected, loving relationship with ourselves, and then also with the people in our lives. But until we're really clear on what that means for us, there's not much. That's like the beginning point. So this is why I talk about embodiment of pleasure, is we need to have a pleasure practice. I say you need to. It's a good thing to do. People go and they work out, they do practices, but are they really embodied in their body? Are they really present and aware? before they start working out and when they're working out. I learned a lot of this from my Pilates classes. You know, a lot of amazing teachers where I study Pilates, and you know, they're always making us aware of the way we're holding our bodies. And from this constant practice, it's allowed me to go, okay, I'm really kind of holding myself funny. I'm really kind of holding on to some tension when I'm doing something. And I'm learning to let myself relax. So tell me, you know, is anybody around today listening to this that can truly relax when they're doing something? Like, is it easy for you to relax in your body when you're maybe trying to spend 5 minutes meditating, or do you find yourself fidgety? And then the mind is going more than anything else. And I say that because that practice there of just spending 10 minutes meditating and relaxing, like you do a really active yoga class and you spend 10 minutes in Shavasana and relaxing. And that is the practice there, right there. Well, that translates into the bedroom and into our sex life. So the little things that you do create a difference in all the other places of your life. So what you do in one part of your life spreads through all parts of your life. Louder? You want me to speak louder? Okay. I'm going to check the volume. Okay. Okay, let me just check here. Okay, let's see if this works better. So, yeah, I don't remember where I was. Okay. So, so embodiment requires us to be present, aware. It requires us to slow down. So if you were to pick something up beside you, let's see, or like, okay, I have a glass. Okay. Or it was a piece of food. You had some food in front of you. This is a glass of water. Anything like that. And you were to slow down enough so that when you touched the glass, you felt that it was cool, that you noticed what it felt like in your fingertip, underneath your fingertips. You can close your eyes. And when you drink your water, or eat your food, or touch an object, what does it feel like on your tongue? What does it feel like as it enters your body? What are the sensations that you're feeling? So sensations are really are something that sometimes we become a little bit more desensitized. We don't feel a lot. We're hurrying, fast. It's just on to the next thing. And so when we don't slow down, we don't feel. And we don't get time to, it doesn't register in us. So learning how to be present is the first thing that I teach everybody that shows up, that wants to work with me. And it's like, you know, even if you just have to sit in front of a mirror, sit in front of each other, face to face, laying down, belly to belly, back to back, and just breathe together. And from your partner's breath and your breath, just kind of syncing up and feeling and kind of creating some expansion, because, you know, I'll tell you, it's nothing harder than to have a great romantic interlude if you're thinking about everything else that you've got to be doing, right? It's just almost impossible. It basically cuts pleasure, because it's like this is this line right here, you know, and it's like, get all stuck up here. We forget to breathe, we don't feel, and then poof, you know, there's nothing going on. I don't feel anything. So I hear this a lot. from when I hear this from women, I hear that, like, I just feel like this builds up of energy, she says to me, and then I don't feel much afterwards. Like, it just kind of, it fizzles out. So the whole idea is then is, what do you do? Well, you have to go right back into the body, and you have to breathe. So I don't know, like, how most people breathe, but I mean, most of the time, our spines aren't straight. We're kind of sitting kind of down like this. Our necks are this. We're sitting in front of our cell phones. We sit at a desk, the arms in front of us. We drive cars. We have funny posture positions. And so we don't really breathe very deeply throughout the day. And we hold in our bellies pretty tight. We strengthen our abs, get rock hard abs, but then it doesn't allow any expansion for belly breathing. So a breath is really about create a huge expansion in the body. So imagine as if you were to breathe, you would want to make sure that you're breathing through your belly first, that is the first place that expands. And in that expansion, your diaphragm relaxes and releases. Your body can open up a little bit. And it basically activates the solar plexus chakra, and if that's frozen there, then the energy doesn't flow upwards, right? And so our breath is like, we want it to fill up the ribs. We want it to allow our ribs to expand. And if you were to put your hands on the side of your body, you'd just take a nice deep inhale, and I'd breathe in. My ribs expand really deeply. And then I'm going to exhale, and I'm going to actually feel my hands go kind of go in. So you're going to actually feel your ribs open up and go down. And your lobes fill, there's three places, like your lobes have a lower, mid, and upper lobes of your lungs. And your lungs literally go up to here, up to your collarbone. And you'd want to actually feel your breath fill up into your throat even. So breath is key. So the key part of embodiment, the key part of having great sex, having more pleasure is your first number one thing. Out of, like, you were to like pick your four most important things, the most important thing would be breath. Without that, we have no life. And so that's would say. Okay, so in your breath, it needs to be soft and relaxed instead of this big kind of thing, right? It's got to be smooth. Imagine as if breath is kind of like the ocean, and the ocean laps up onto the shore. It's gonna be a quiet surf. Laps up onto the shore. It makes a nice, beautiful sound and filling up sound. And then as you exhale, it's very soft. And the exhale, it literally is like a slow, constant exhale instead of halting or forced. So it needs to be relaxed. And we can improve our breath and our capacity for breath by using counting as a way of increasing our capacity. So first, I suggest people start with just an inhale and then a 3-count breath. So you would inhale and count to 3 slowly, make a little pause, and then exhale to 3. And then as you get used to slowing down, you can increase it to 4. 4 breaths in, 4 breaths out. The slower you breathe, the more downgraded your nervous system is going to be. So if you're a little scared and nervous or something's going on, if you just take some deep belly breaths, that alone, I mean, they always talk about it, but you can also use this when you're with a partner and you're kind of noticing that you're not feeling so much anymore. You can use this breath, like a nice slow breath, imagining that this, whatever you're feeling, that embodiment of pleasure. So Even if it's someone touching your hand, you can breathe that in as if you're absorbing it with your breath. Yeah. So, any questions or comments? Does anyone here have any experiences with their breathing? Tell me how you're breathing now. The other, so the reason I talk about a pleasure practice. So the body learns by practice. So we can learn to do all kinds of things and be really good at playing basketball, swimming, anything that we want. But it's the same thing for pleasure. So we need to practice breath and attention onto what's happening in our body. And this will help us create a better relationship with our body and listen to it and feel into it. And I think a lot of times people get disconnected from what their body's feeling and they just let their mind answer. But the body's this vehicle that we got to live in, and it's got to be happy or it starts, acting up. So, for example, somebody asks you to do something, whether it be an act of service or work an extra shift or help them do something, and you just go, yeah, sure. Okay, I'll do that. And then when you get off the phone, you go, I don't know. Maybe I don't really want to do that. Now that I think about it, I don't really have the time. And I'm not sure if that will serve me, or and then they end up doing something that they maybe don't want to do. Instead of, if you were to go, well, can I get back to you and let you know? And really feel into it. And if you have to, with practice, you could be able to go, okay, think about it for a moment and feel into your body and then make an answer based on that, instead of going, okay, yeah, sure. So that's a boundary issue, right? Often we have these boundaries, and if you're used to pleasing people and taking care of people, that's something that can happen quite a bit. We tune out and we just want to help and be nice and be good, but then sometimes it doesn't always work in our benefit. Yeah. So a little sip of water here. So what other things can we do to be in our body? Well, that was just breath. Okay, this is like a little pared down. Obviously, when I teach these things, we spend time doing. So what I would suggest for all of you to do is, if you listen to this, is I have some exercises, and I can tell them to you, but I'd rather if you wanted to really experience what it felt like to be in your body, I have a couple of exercises. And if you haven't registered for this training through my website, then you won't get the little worksheet. And then the worksheet is all the exercises that I'm going to give you over the next 3 days. So in order to get a hold of that, you'll need to register so that I can get it to you. Okay? I'll get somebody to put the link up on the comments section so that you can do that. So being embodied means being fully present and awake in our bodies and able to connect to the inner wisdom that they provide. So when we're connected to that source of energy, to our sexual energy, that is kind of like the fuel to the fire. So we refer to that as kundalini. Yeah. And that kundalini kind of stays sleeping, and it's comfortable, and we live our lives. And unless we activate this kundalini through yoga and yoga practices or breathwork practices, or some people have spontaneous awakenings, but usually, when we're ready, this energy starts to open up. And when this opens up, we start to wake up. And when we wake up, the energy starts to move through our bodies. And the one way to activate this in tantric practices, it's the idea is that we're taking that base sexual energy, that animalistic energy that sits there and comes out for a little while, and then it gets stuffed back down into the box, and it'll come out a little bit, maybe when it's appropriate, or maybe not, because it's been stifled down in here. And the problem with being embodied, or being able to feel like you're really in your body, is that most people have experienced some trauma in their body. And when I talk about trauma, there are all kinds of traumas that we can experience. Even in the womb, if our parents are fighting, and we hear this, how we're birthed, the state of our mother's state, emotional state, that those things can be traumatic. They can be stuck in our cells, in our DNA. Yeah. So trauma, is something that is not just your trauma that you have in your life. It's your mother's trauma, your grandmother's trauma, your great-grandfather's trauma. They say about 4 generations is the epigenetics of trauma. It runs through the genetic gene. And it isn't that it changes our DNA, but it coats our DNA, and our lives are based upon how we receive love, and what love is to us is what we do to get love in our lives. Like, for example, you're a young girl and your father always wanted a boy, and you weren't a boy, and he was disappointed. So you acted more boyish because it made him happy. You played catch with him, you went to games with him, and you were a bit more of a tomboy. And that's what you needed to do to get love. And so then that stays with you. Now that's just like a little bit of an example, but you imagine that whatever you need to do in order to get love is what you end up doing in your relationships. So that's how we learn to get love from when we're very little, comes from that, and it comes from 4 generations back. It's a pretty big deal. So how do you get more embodied? We have to get rid of that kind of, that, trauma creates these things, like, the things that happen is that if a traumatic event happens, we want to kind of like fly away. We want to fight or flight. That's the running away kind of thing. We have all this like adrenaline goes through our bodies. And then, and that's more for men, more for the masculine. I'm being a little binary here, but, the way the masculine is oriented is that more the testosterone, I'll say, is that he's going to want to fight or flight. He's going to want to pick up the spear and throw it at that dinosaur, okay, right? Or that animal coming to attack. And women's typical response, the feminine response, is to freeze. So to be quiet, to be muted, to disappear, because you can't fight. You may not be strong enough. But if you're low key and you kind of hide, that's maybe safer. So, it shows up in lots of different ways, and it shows up differently. But those things those like are layers of one emotion gets layered over. And I don't know if you've heard about armoring, but we get armored. And so we can't feel anymore, or you've been traumatized in bigger ways. It could be verbal, it could be physical. It doesn't matter what it was. These pains, these emotions are held in our bodies. And the breath work alone can release it. But we can also let go of these things by using the other two tools that are extremely valuable. And it is sound. And sound can allow us to express. It's really, you know, sound is how would I say? It's the manifestation. The words that we say are the manifestation. Okay, so whatever we say can become true. So we must watch our words for sure. So if you think about that, it goes back to the other thing I was talking about, where somebody asks you what you would like if you could help them out, and you say yes. So because our words are so powerful, and you know, sometimes we don't think before we say something, but knowing, and it isn't just like to someone else, it's to ourselves. The things that you say to yourself, the talk that you have, your own self-talk in your mind and in your mouth, are really powerful. The things you say about others, you know, I have this big thing. I dislike gossip so much because I find it so disempowering to everybody involved. And someone had been, I was in a conversation with somebody, and she was talking away about this and that, and I says, I don't know, it's not really any of my business. You know, I'm not going to talk about it, because it's not. I don't know the facts. I don't even know what's going on. So I'd rather not even give that energy, because all it does is it perpetuates whatever is going on for that person. I'd rather they release it and be free of it, right? So sound is a big deal, and often in order to have more pleasure, we need to activate sound. So for women, it works a little differently than for men, in the sense that in the sexual realm, more or less, like for men, sound helps them move energy up through the whole body, so that their sexual energy can move upward and spread out. And for women, I feel like, if I go from my own personal experience, sound helps me expand, and it helps me feel more, you know. So if I don't make any sound, or if I'm really silent, I find my pleasure kind of runs with my sound. So I use my breath and sound together. So in my exhales, it's really important that I really let some sound come out of my mouth. And it's just a ha, you know, just the H-A, ha. And that the sound actually come from deep inside, more in your heart chakra. If you're, you know, I get people to breathe, and it's like, and I'll get a, ha. And it's so difficult to make sound, but it can change your life, you know. And when you practice that, then the words that come out of your mouth, in regards to sound, like what you say you're going to do for yourself, happens. Your intentions come true. It's like imagine it's a supercharge, taking that sexual energy and supercharging it and moving it upwards through the body, and using sound as the vehicle. It's effortless. It was made to work that way. So with your breath, you're moving the energy in your belly, yeah, and you're moving in your heart, but sound is like the next wave and the next level. And so this movement, you know, and that's the next point. So there was first there was breath, And then we talked about sound just now. And then there's movement. Well, what, you know, how do we have pleasure if we're frozen? If we can't move? If our hips don't move? If we have injuries in our body? So really, it's important that we have like a healthy body, that our body can move. And so obviously, you know, we all have limitations, but using what we have so that we can feel more. So just imagine that breath creates vibration in the body, yeah, just from inhaling and exhaling. Sound creates also a vibration. And, you know, and I teach more about this, but I use sound to open up the different energies in the body. And, you know, musicians know this, all the beautiful sound healers that I know in Vancouver and on the island that use sound to help open up energy. And, you know, like the crystal bowls, or, for example, this is my favorite. So I have this beautiful bowl, and it's white Tara in the inside. Yeah. And so you can use this to make sound and influence what's going on in the body. Sound influences water and our blood, which is what we're, you know, the wavelength. So here, I'll just play it for you. Isn't that beautiful? Okay. And it goes on and on and on. Okay, I think everything is... I think there was some feedback there. That was interesting. So, yeah, so sound is a really big part of embodiment. So, okay. The next thing is awareness. I mean, if we don't take time to slow down and actually do a scan. So, I don't know if anyone's experienced this. This is a yoga practice, or I learned it in my sexological bodywork training, and it was learning how to do a body scan and actually taking the time to, you know, start at the top of your head down to the tips of your toes and noticing every sensation, noticing what it feels like to inhale and feel the air go through your nose and your nostrils, what the inside of your mouth felt like, what your throat feels like and your chest feels like when it expands, etc. And just noticing every part of your body, because the more we practice at doing these body scans, the more aware and present we're going to become. Because good relationships to our bodies start with being aware of what's actually happening. So awareness, it's something that we need to develop. One of my favorite books that I read in my 20s was Carlos Castaneda's book, you know, and the shamanistic path, and he talked about those walking meditations, walking one foot in front of the other, feeling everything as you step down, feeling the awareness of everything that's happening around you, the smells, and creating that as your meditation. You know, dynamic meditations, you know, Osho. Now there's lots of talk about Osho because they've done this Netflix thing about him in his 6-part series, and but he still has, you know, the valuable things is that he brought really the idea of dynamic meditations and movement meditations to release emotions and traumas in the body. You know, so developing a practice where we use all 4 of those things, that we use our breath, that we use sound and movement and awareness, and we use them on a regular basis. And if we can create a practice where we do that, it can change your life. And then if we add pleasure to that practice, so consciously bringing pleasure into our lives, whether it be whether a feather feels like on your skin, or even if you were to touch your own skin, and even if the pleasure practice was just on your feet or your hair, it doesn't really matter where it is. But the more we practice at it and nurturing ourselves that way, the difference it makes. So I challenge people. Let me just find here what I wanted to do. Yeah, so there are questions, So what is your relationship to pleasure? Do you have one? Do you have pleasure in your life? And what does that pleasure look like? So what is your relationship to pleasure? Do you practice at pleasure? And if it's something that you think you want to bring more of in your life, if you want a better sex life, then practicing pleasure is the way to get there, so that you can learn, your body can learn. So the thing is that everything that I've talked about, we're dealing with the nervous system. So once we tune into our nervous system, and it allows us to create the practicing, so we're breathing, we're relaxing the body, we have this conscious awareness, we're doing these body scans, we're breathing, so it brings us into our body, and we're making sound, again, more into our body. Then we bring pleasure into it, and then we can practice with ourselves, and then guess what? When you're with a partner later on, it's so much easier. Yeah. So, are you practicing pleasure? And if you want more pleasure in your life, what can you do to create more pleasure in your life? And if you think you have already a lot of pleasure in your life, there's an ability to create more capacity for pleasure. So look at it this way. So say we're happy with our sex life, and we're kind of like here. And we kind of go this way. And then, I don't know, something starts to dip down, and we kind of start getting dissatisfied with our sex life. And we're bored now, and we've been in this relationship 10 years. We got to kind of take it up, right? We got to start creating some change. Well, how do you do that? Right? That's the thing. How do you, once you've kind of gone down that curve, well, it's by paying attention to pleasure. So if you have a pleasure practice with yourself, and when I talk about pleasure practice, it's like we're redefining what it means. It doesn't mean rubbing one out and being orgasm driven at all. It means learning how to feel more with what you've got. Learning how to create more capacity. So pleasure practice is something where I would say the biggest benefit is if you could do it every day. So in one of my trainings, I had to do it for 30 days, 30-day pleasure practice. And I'll tell you, I had resistance sometimes, and I would still do it because I had to write about it, because it was part of my credits. It was part of what I needed to do in order to graduate. And I did it. And I'll tell you, my relationship with my body changed greatly. I think I saw myself with different eyes. I loved myself a lot more. I also learned that I could have more pleasure. That what I thought my capacity for pleasure is my bucket. Well, I got a bigger bucket. Right? So, what I would challenge everybody to do is pleasure is a practice that requires your attention. So, and requires ritual. And so what does that mean? I use ritual, and ritual could be anything for anyone. So I believe ritual contains four things, I guess, about four things. It would be an intention. So that would be my first thing. My intention would be to, in this pleasure practice, to blank, whatever that is, feel more, love myself more, get, understand my body, whatever it may be. And you can use tarot cards, you can, you can do lots of different ways, so that would be the first thing. The second thing is space. So creating that space where a room where it feels comfortable and safe and you don't have anyone disturbing you, whether it be the bathtub or a special room or a corner of a room, whatever it may be. Then I like to incorporate the elements. So we have space, but the elements of fire, water, earth, and like a candle, water. So usually there's water in the room or a fountain or a water feature of some sort. Even just a glass of water to hold space. A plant, which represents earth or fruit, often. I know it sounds like a thing, but these are things that kind of create this space where I'm getting ready and I'm a divine being. I'm beautiful. I want to feel good, and I want to give that some attention. So imagine you would do that when you first start dating somebody and you're young. You're young and you start and you get ready for the date. But you never necessarily get ready for the date with yourself. Yeah. So getting ready for the date for yourself, and then committing to something where it's a practice. Maybe you can only commit to 20 minutes, but that 20 minutes is a big deal. And from there, the other thing is really good to do in a pleasure practice is to write about it, to write about what you noticed, what you felt, what your thoughts were going through your mind. And as any kind of meditation practice, so we can consider that a sensual meditation practice, that you would use this time to be connected to the breath and the sound in your body, and to move, to dance. So dancing is also a really great way, or do some yoga. Whatever it may be, everyone's going to be different, and your flavor, you're going to be different every day. So what is your flavor today? One day I want coffee ice cream or gelato. The next day I want chocolate. It usually goes between the two, right? So, we all have, and our tastes change and our bodies change. So pleasure practice allows us to create more capacity. The other thing I want to say about pleasure is people who have a lot of stress in their lives don't have a large capacity for pleasure because you're so contracted. And things like breath, sound and movement, dancing, laughter makes you breathe. That creates an expansion. And so pleasure then has somewhere to go. So if we have too much contraction in our lives and not enough space, that means we don't have enough time, which means we don't have enough money, which means we don't have enough love. Lots of contraction, right? Which means that we create illness in the body. Our hormones go all crazy. Our adrenals get fatigued. Our thyroid gland starts acting up, But by doing practices where pleasure is a practice, then you're combating all that stress in your life. You're regulating your hormones, and you're helping, when you start producing so much cortisol and the body can't produce it anymore. So that's my challenge to you, is write it down, say, I'm going to do this practice. I want to have a better relationship. I want to have better sex. I want to love myself more. I want to feel better every day. Pleasure practice can create all those things. And we'll talk more about it, but this is just, I'm not going very deep. This is just a little bit of an overview. And I just do suggest, like, you want to, if you want to have this practice as something that you can do for yourself, just make sure that you go to my website, and I think it's oliviajade.net, and then it's /embodied -pleasure. We'll put it up in the comments so that you can make sure that you get that little the exercises that I'm going to give to everybody. So you get that out, and then I'll make sure that everybody gets that. And yeah, I'd like to know more about you. Like, what's your pleasure practice? Do you have one? Is it something that you ever thought of doing? Do you think it could help you, or are you saying, oh, what's this pleasure practice? This is crazy, or I couldn't find the time, or I don't have that. But if you want to have a better relationship with yourself and more intimacy in your relationship, it requires that you do your homework. Well, it's not really homework, but it's kind of like pleasure work, yeah. And it feels a little indulgent sometimes, but that's okay. We can indulge ourselves sometimes. If there is anything else, let me see. Oh, the other thing is, in your pleasure practice, start paying attention to your pleasure switches, things that do it for you. So you like this music, and you like being in this position, or you like that toy, or you like whatever it is, that just noticing. So using the body scan to know what your switches are. And when you journal about this, then you can write about it, because these are things that eventually that you can share with your partner. It's like having all these new tools in your tool bag. Oh, and then also what you're doing is the more you practice pleasure, you're developing new neural pathways, right? So these pathways are going to be developed by your practice. So I think that's all for today. And if there's something that you want me to talk about in this next 2 days that I've got going on. So the next one is Saturday at noon, right here on Central Intelligence on Facebook, on the group. And the one after that, so Saturday at 12, and then Monday at 1. So, you have some time to practice in between. Get that pleasure practice, and make a ritual for yourself. And I want to know let me know what happened if you did it. And did it feel good? Did it do something for you? Did you learn something about yourself? Any takeaways that you get with that? Yeah, so I think that's about it. So I really enjoyed this. This is like, I couldn't believe it. I talked for 54 minutes. That's quite amazing. And I felt pretty comfortable doing this with everybody here. I know that for me, this is a new medium. I'm used to people looking back at me and talking to me. So this has been really fun. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of you next Monday. And share this with your friends. I mean, if people are interested in learning about what a pleasure practice is, or learning how to have more pleasure in their lives, which I think probably most people do, this is the way to start. So thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. Oh no, Saturday, sorry. Okay, take care now. Bye.